Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and with me is my colleague Samantha Mansfield. Samantha, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
We thought today we should stop and pause and first of all say congratulations to your team members that just hit some major milestones last week with some deadlines. And we know this is a peak period for many, many people. And to that end, we then also thought we should probably pause and talk to our HR friends and talent leaders that participate with us on these HR huddles and say, I think we should stop and maybe figure out some things we could do to check in on our people and to make sure they're okay, re-engage them, figure out what the next deadlines are looking like because they're very compressed this time of year with all the different projects and client engagements that various folks are working on. And so we just thought it might be a good time to stop and celebrate, but also to stop and say, how do we make sure, we are staying close to our people and figuring out what they need and how we can support them through the next hurdle. I think we're like on mile 22 in a 26-mile marathon, something like that. I think that's about where we are today. And so we thought it was a good time to stop and assess. Anything else you want to say to set that up, Samantha, or anything else, from a HR leader perspective to consider as we begin? And then we'll dive into the details and some ideas that we have, but anything else big picture?
Yeah, no, I think the key thing is, we're talking about this because one of the items we have to be mindful of is the retention rates in the postseason and making sure that, like you said, staying connected, celebrating milestones, which this was a big one for many people over or last week, and just acknowledging people and making them feel seen and appreciated for all that they've done. We're not there yet. You can probably see the finish line to keep with your analogy, but we really want to be intentional about this so that we have strong retention rates at the end of the season.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I think if we follow the thread of gratitude, appreciation, that's probably where we would start.
Mhm.
And so it could be a group email or a team email saying, hey, I know we just, finished some major milestones and deadlines, in the past week. And, we want to just share our appreciation, for you and, celebrate with you that we, accomplished that hurdle, and, we have more to go. And so, we need to take a breath, re-energize, refuel, and say, okay, how do we then, pursue, continue to persevere
Mhm.
and move towards those next deadlines. But I think that gratitude would go a long way. And I know, depending on the size of your firm and how you guys communicate, it could be a firm email from the managing partner or CEO. It could be that, and then maybe individual team, leader emails, to acknowledge maybe specific accomplishments of that team. And one-on-ones go a long way. So, I like the idea of broad communications, but I also like, stopping by Samantha's desk or checking in with her on Teams if we're not working together in the office and say, hey, I just wanted to say how grateful I am, for you and, what we've done together on these clients in the recent weeks or, whatever it is. But specificity is always helpful.
Mhm.
We always like general thank yous and appreciation, but specificity also makes people feel seen
Mhm.
and appreciated in their specific contributions. So those are some places that you might be able to share as HR leaders to even write template emails for these folks because they're busy too, that they could share with their teams or give them a few places to identify where they could do some maybe one-on-one or personal outreach.
Yeah. And I think that personal outreach, to your point of it feels like, oh, do I have time for that? But based on some of the research on feeling appreciated, that individual is truly what goes a long way. And I think you're going to have some people, especially those that tend to be very critical of themselves. Those mass emails, they could look at that and say, oh, the managing partner is saying that to everybody, but not me because I made this mistake or I wasn't as efficient on this. And, they can discount themselves because, well, they're not going to take me off. They're just going to email everybody, but that really wasn't meant for me. And it seems silly, but we have so many of us. And I say us because I'm one that, that inner dialogue just really will kind of eat at them. And that's where that personal is so valuable, because then they do recognize that that was intended for them as well. So really encourage your managers to find those opportunities to give them specific individualized recognition and acknowledgement. And it doesn't have to be after milestone deadlines, like we just had. Just really encourage that throughout
Yeah.
and throughout these last couple of weeks, because yes, we're near the finish line and that's exciting, but you're also your most tired at this point too.
Yes. Well, and I think that's, where I was headed with, re-energize, refuel, how do we take a
Mhm.
breath? What can we do to pause, maybe as a team, but also individually, and just, make sure maybe people have a couple evenings off this week if they've been, burning both ends, of the stick. And, how do we find that, energy to be able to do that? We also have some holidays coming up.
Mhm.
And so, how are we going to check in with people to make sure that, they can maybe have some form of holiday celebration with their family, figure out what the holidays are that they celebrate and how, and, help them manage and prioritize work, communicate and set expectations with their team or their clients so that they feel like they can participate in those, holidays in the next couple of weeks that are coming up here, right smack in between, some more deadlines that we have.
Exactly.
But I think that will keep the energy up in the sense of I still, am able to have some personal fulfillment
Mhm.
in my, family commitments or, outside, obligations or joy, where whatever it is that they might be participating in. But, finding out, what that is for the each individual, I think is important.
Yeah. Well, and it goes to the being seen as a whole person as well, that I have things in my life that I'm valuing outside the firm, and the firm is respecting that and its importance to me. And allowing people to have some personal boundaries. That was a discussion I had today. Is yes, we have crunch time, and yes, that requires more of me, but for some folks who have really been working on hard on being able to set better boundaries and the expectations, then they started beating up on themselves saying, gosh, now I haven't respected my own boundaries, right? It's not the firm's fault. I haven't even done that. And so, what we talked about is communicating with their leadership about what are the non negotiables, and like you said, with these holidays coming up, if something like Good Friday, or some of the additional holidays that are here, if that's a non-negotiable, like that is a very precious holiday to you as a person, or to that person. What can we do to work around that so that that person has that? And I was just reading a quote from Adam Grant this morning, and he was talking about that time off is not our only way to unplug, but being engaged with the things that mean something to us can just as effectively recharge us as the just having time off.
Right.
And so I think that's a key piece of what you were just saying.
Yes. And I think part of that is also stopping and assessing workload balance right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
And, we still hear stories of people working 2,800, 3,000 hours,
Mhm.
during busy season. And, and it's at all levels. You could think, well, that's, a partner doing that. Well, no. I've heard some seniors and managers that are doing that and they're just heads down and they're really, really good at client service and cranking out work, but it's not healthy. it's not a good role model. And if partners are doing it, by the way, not a good role model.
Mhm.
And so we have to step back and, maybe run some reports, where are people, working if we've not been monitoring those on a weekly basis. And then also look and say, what are they scheduled for coming up? Look at the next 30 days and just say, what is that going to look like? And how do we maybe need to reallocate or reprioritize, or in the case, if it's on the tax side, extend, or on the audit side, I've been talking to some of the audit managers and senior managers about, anticipating, especially on prior year. We know what's going to come. We know when the board meetings are, yet we don't always manage accordingly, and we can move things out. We feel like we've got, a 2 week review time or whatever, like the rule is, instead of like looking at the schedule. We got to look at all of it, both of those things or all of those things, and saying, what can we move? Partly like when I'm talking to my coachees, it's like, I had one woman, she's like, I do it to myself. I can see I completely do it to myself. And then I do it to my team. And
Mhm.
so we actually have more say in that than we might feel we do. And so, working with individuals on that, working with our department leaders on that, and just figuring out, where are we, and where are we as a group, and then where are we for, specific individuals. And again, you probably know, you have suspect who some of those individuals are that we might need to, check in and say, we might need to reallocate some work, or we might need to reset some expectations on timing, and just really get real about it, and with limited or no consequence or negative impact to the clients. I know that's what we always worry about, but
Mhm.
often when we look at that, we're adding that additional pressure that is not necessarily needed in order to, meet our commitments and have a great client experience. And if we manage expectations and communicate, we can have it all work out.
Yeah. Well, and appreciate that you were looking at it from the leader's perspective, where it can impact the team so significantly based on the planning, right? And to that point, reminding your managers to not be doing all of their planning on best case scenario, reminding them that things happen. People get sick, clients get stuff in late, things get delayed. And so being mindful as they're working on those schedules, that are they building in the buffer time for things not going exactly according to the ideal plan?
Right.
So on that leader side. Another conversation I was recently in was really talking about those first years or second years, those that are really new to all of this, and the exhaustion they're feeling, and that they're hearing, this feeling of burnout in a first year. And one of the things we got talking about is, remember, as HR, as leaders, that it's mentally exhausting for a first year, right? So you might be looking at it and saying, oh my gosh, I work so many more hours than that. But everything they're doing, or virtually everything they're doing, is new, and it's intellectually taxing to them, and they're having to figure everything out, and they probably feel like they're under a microscope on everything because again, it's getting reviewed and they're getting feedback, and all of that on top of the added actual working hours is very exhausting. And so they don't have that stamina yet. And it's really important for us to, one, give a little grace on that, and just realizing that there is a stamina you've built up over the years. And there's also knowledge that you have on some work that you're doing that just comes a little easier and is not so hard. You probably almost feel like you can do it without thinking. For those first and second years, they're not at that point. And so every moment is trying to problem solve and figure it out, and make sure they're showing up looking good. And so that might be something to think about and acknowledge, that could give that little extra boost for them, and remind them too, they're almost done. This isn't going to be the schedule forever. This is not what it's going to be from this point on. But certainly something different to recognize for our more inexperienced team members.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I do think, we forget, the mental exhaustion, and the continuous learning. And for some of them, frankly, it's their first, 40 plus hours right now a week job,
Mhm.
career that they've had. They might have done it in smaller chunks, 5 hours, 6 hours here, but not the 8 to 9 hours on top of that, just the mental, learning, and, different personalities. We talk about personalities here sometimes on, HR Huddle, they all process it differently, and assimilate it differently. And, one of the things to maybe think about coaching them on is, maybe you work, for, an hour and then take a 5 minute break, stand up, stretch, go get a, glass of water. I mean, just that movement alone
Yeah.
helps shift it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or maybe they need to, you guys are doing some kind of fun competition. I can stop for 5 minutes and input to my competition, word of the day or the New York Times games or, whatever it might be, your version of that. But that 5 minutes literally can make all the difference in the world. And if we do that a few times a day and have permission to do it, again, if they don't have role models that do that, if I'm in the office and I don't see people doing that or taking lunch or those kinds of things, they might be sitting there feeling like they can't. But then in our virtual world, in our remote setting, I don't know that. And so, how do we make sure we stop, stretch, step outside, whatever it might be, get some of that sunshine, walk around the block, and get that fresh air. I can do that and do a check-in meeting, by the way. I could, listen to some music. I could do several things while, participating in, kind of a stretch break. I used to do walking meetings, when I lived in Southern California. It was a perfect place to do walking meetings. And we would go out, for 15, 20 minutes and, we would have a check-in meeting. And that was very much an in-person paradigm and in Southern California. So I know Samantha and I are going to be getting some snow here for spring, that's coming upon us. So it just depends on where you are and what you're doing. But I could do it, Samantha and I could do it virtually with our headsets, and we could talk. But anyway, just that change up. But don't assume that, especially your newer staff, know these things. We have to give them ideas, we have to demonstrate it. We have to encourage our managers to do that. And by the way, it's hard for your managers to stop and take those breaks. So this would be a good reminder for them too. I'm sure they could use it just as much, but they've built that stamina, Samantha, that you were talking about,
Right.
how to just kind of keep going. And, we need to make sure we, take care of ourselves as well.
Well, and to your point too of encourage our managers and partners to do it, it's that example. So
Mhm.
you used the lead by example. Well, that's another one. Because again, those younger professionals, they're watching how the older, more experienced professionals have navigated their season, and so if they're saying, "Well, they don't ever take a break and they don't go up and eat lunch outside their desk," then they could think, "Is that going to look bad if I do that?" Right? And so just reminding of those types of things that no, it is good. It is a positive thing. And you do actually work faster and you work better because you're not physically and mentally feeling so fatigued. So it's a really good reminder
Yes.
for people.
Yes.
And again, so many feel like I just need to keep chugging away. And so HR professionals, these are again those great, sometimes we feel when these things are said to us, I've heard this before. It's not like I've never heard it before, but we just need those reminders that, oh, wait, no. Honestly, I will work faster if I will just give myself a little bit of a break,
Yes.
mental and physical break. So
Yeah.
I think that's so valuable, and you guys can have so much influence in helping get this across the finish line by supporting your teams in this way.
I also think give your people something to look forward to.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is, I know many firms, plan, a post busy season party, or some kind of get together, maybe even giving a day off, time off, and it could be flex time off, just depending on how you're structured. But remind people of that. Save the date. We're looking forward to doing this. Or have you thought about what you're going to do with your time off on April 18th, or whatever the message is, and so that they have that to look forward to. A lot of firms are going to do an all firm meeting or some kind of team event or firm retreat, May, June timeframe. And you could start to do some drip marketing, about maybe some of the topics or some of the fun, or, maybe a kind of a quiz, to anticipate some of the things that you're going to be doing. So again, just, time to look forward to, get together, and here's some fun things we're going to do. And here's some learning we're going to maybe do together, just so that, I see something else at the end of that tunnel that you were talking about. We have, firms tell us, and seniors and supervisors tell us that participate in our senior and supervisor program. This was the best thing for me to have to look forward to. Number one, after busy season, that I was, have this leadership program, that the firm's investing in me. And then second, that they could just stop and pause and, focus on themselves. How do I be a better leader? How did I do this, post busy season? What could I, take from this, leadership program or this conversation, and start to, apply it to how I work with the clients, or my communications, or my time management as I assess how did I do during these peak periods? What could I start to practice now, during the summer? But having that to look forward to, and then, being able to participate in those kinds of events, pretty immediately after busy season makes a huge difference for people.
Yep. Yep. Because it again goes back to, it's not just about time off to recharge, right?
Right.
It's the knowing, hey, there's a light or hope on the horizon that, man, I can get better, or I can get better at holding my team accountable. This is my first year as a senior, and I had to try to get all of those first years rowing together and doing all of that, and I didn't know what I was doing, and maybe they felt like they were floundering. And what, that hope that, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn how to do that better.
Yeah.
That is, there's a lot to be said for that, because I'm not going to have a Groundhog's Day where I'm going to have to go through and figure this all out again, in the next busy season, whenever that might be, based on the service line, of course, that they're in.
Yes, exactly. So hopefully this gave you some ideas. The only final one I'll have to say, and then we'll wrap up here, is check in on your people. Remind your career coaches or career managers to have a one-on-one and check in and say, how are you doing? Really? What's going well? What's not going well? Or where do you need support? What can I do to help? And, check in with each of their people that they're assigned to, or that they work the closest with on their teams, and just pause and have a 15-minute conversation with each one of them. That personal outreach and that personal conversation goes a long way. And I can do it in person. I can do it on video. But, really just look them in the eye and say, how are you really? And, what's your next 30 days look like? What's going well? What are you worried about? What can I do to help? So remind people to do that as well. So hopefully this gives you some ideas. We hope it, increases, current morale and engagement, and gives that, new breath, that re-energized, feeling, for your team members, and then sustains them long-term. So they remember, how their leaders were during these peak periods. When we come out of that in May, June, they look behind and they go, I felt taken care of. It might have been squeezy, but gosh, I had a great team, and I felt like, they were linking arms with me, and we all, did a great job serving the clients and, meeting the commitments that we had. So let us know also if we missed some ideas. We'd love to hear from you. Share with us. You can message us. And thank you for being with us today on our HR Huddle. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody.